Hello, everyone. Hello, hello, hello. Come on in the room. We are so excited that you are here. Give us a quick moment to share our timeline. I am beyond excited. Oh my gosh, I'm beyond excited about this conversation that we're going to have today. We're going to give you a minute to come on in, and while we're waiting on you, we'll go ahead and share this show. We hope that you are having a phenomenal day, have had a phenomenal week thus far, and that what we say today, the conversation we have, please feel free to chime in the chat. We'll acknowledge your questions as well. But hello, everyone. Hello. We just want you to come on in and hopefully this conversation will help you, your family, someone you know, to be a little bit better in life. That's what these conversations are about. We all can get better every day. That's my goal. I hope it is yours as well. While I'm doing this, I'm going to let my guest just go ahead and introduce herself.
Hi, Jocelyn. Good to be here with you. So my name is Jon'a Joiner, and I am the founder of Drink First Then Pour, which is essentially a platform. It started as a motto that I began saying to myself after my husband passed away, and I was really trying to figure out how to deal with my grief and sadness, and at the same time, we had a daughter who was 16 months old at the time. So at the same time, trying to be what I needed to be for her, as a mom, now a single parent, and then also my career, my job, and there were so many things competing for just my time and attention and brain space and everything that I just recognized that at that moment I needed to figure out how to give to myself before I was giving to all the other things that were in my life. I just felt depleted, burnt out, really, in addition to also obviously sad, right? Now a widow and trying to navigate that. So Drink First Then Pour just started as something I would say to myself. And as I began to walk through my own grief journey, I met and engaged with so many other people who had experienced grief in different ways. And I just recognized that there was like a tribe out here. And the Drink First Then Pour platform is really all about helping women to set boundaries and prioritize themselves. Um, Women who are on the edge of burnout to set their priorities and establish boundaries. So that's what Drink First Then Pour is all about.
Oh, you said so much. Okay. Hold on. You said so much. I don't even know where to begin. Your first of all, your story, the fact of you losing your spouse, just having a 16-month-year-old baby. Um, you know, I, the grace that we have to live is just simply amazing. The grace we have to continue when life happens to us is just simply amazing. I can relate to that. We lost my sister, and at the time, she had a 10-year-old daughter. And you just think like these things will never happen to you. And when they do, you have to figure out, how do I continue on with a new normal, and not make that new normal where there's no successful living. And so it requires you to really tap into finding out the new person that needs to arise, that's in this inside of you, to handle, to navigate this new life. And so you did that. And one of the things that you did was put yourself first. I think that's so key. I made a t-shirt to remind myself, God, me, and them, then them, because we as women, we are nurturers, we are the backbone of our families. And we just love giving, but we give to the place where we are depleted and we don't know what it means to teach people how to give back to us so that we have more to pour out. Can you talk to us, like, when this happened to you, how did you begin to just do that and not feel like I'm not a good mom, and I'm not a good employee, and I'm not a good or whatever I used to do, because now I've decided that I must come first?
You know, sometimes I think we get frustrated when we hear people say, that their aha moment was like some deep tragedy, right? It's like that was the impetus that really started them on a new path in life. Well, that is also my story as well. I before my husband passed away, he had cancer. So he had battled cancer for a number of years. So that had become part of our normal, if you will. So operating out of survival mode became the norm. That was just that was what we did. That's how we made it, from day to day. And once he was gone, the trauma of one, what we had experienced together, right? Then on top of okay, so now I need to figure out what to do now, right? Like what to do now. What next? And that was a lot of trauma, that took place around that time for me. And in addition to being a new mom, navigating my career, all these different things, I literally got to the edge of myself. It got to a point where I was like, okay, the way that I am operating, the way that I am showing up is not sustainable.
Mhm.
And I just knew it was like one night I was rocking my daughter to sleep and she put her hand, I was crying, and she had put her hand on my cheek and almost as if to say, it's gonna be okay, mom. Like she was too young to talk, but the way she looked at me, it was almost like it's gonna be okay. And I remember thinking to myself, okay, if my infant daughter feels the need to console me, right, then obviously uh I'm not showing up as my best, right?
Mm.
I've obviously, as they say, my slip is showing, right? So I've just recognized that okay, something has to give, because I am not going to be able to push through this um, in a way that doesn't leave someone harmed or scathed, right? Like either I'm gonna be bloodied and bruised, or someone is not. There are going to be some side effects, if you will, right? If I continue to show up in this way. So for me, that was the point where I just decided that I needed to do some things differently, and that it kind of kickstarted my journey. And it's been a very interesting journey since then.
So tell me this, what did that look like, you showing up for you? What, like, give us some examples of some of the things that you were doing that you shifted and began to do to make sure that you were taken care of.
Well, things that I were doing, I was pretty much going. I was going from wake up in the morning, get my daughter ready, get myself ready, drop her off at daycare, go to work all day, come home, or pick her up, fix dinner, come home, do work all night until I fall asleep, and then repeat, repeat, repeat. So that was the way I was showing up previously. And some of the initial changes that I made, one were counseling, grief counseling. And it's interesting because when I went to grief counseling really for the first time, and the therapist was like, "Well, let's talk about your parents." And I'm like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa. I'm here for grief. I'm here because I'm sad. I'm not here to open up like other boxes, right? Like I'm here for this specific thing." And it evolved. So it evolved from grief counseling to really just therapy overall, which has been a very, very good change that I made in my life, is just really focusing on my healing, recognizing that there were some broken pieces, recognizing that uh, I had been dealing with and I had suppressed a lot of things. So being able to like become aware of that, uncover it, and then start to work on it was instrumental to where I am today. So that was part of it. But also, I looked at coaching in a couple of different ways. So I had the grief counselor, but then I also had an executive coach for work and career stuff. Ultimately, I sought out a trainer to work out with as well. And it was like these steps, right? Like I didn't do all these things at the same time.
Mhm.
It was like, okay, let's take one step. All right, let's, check our balance. All right, let's take another step. Let's check our balance. Let's calibrate. Let's see where we are. And over, the course of a few years, there were just several different small changes that I made that had a significant impact. I started to establish a routine for going to sleep at night. Um, shutting down my phone at a certain time, creating a mood and an environment for sleep and rest, which was not something that I did before. Um, Waking up earlier in the morning, having some quiet time for myself in the morning, spending a little bit more time outside. Prior to COVID, I just, I wasn't really an outdoor kind of person. But I learned that just being, planting my feet in the ground, letting the sun touch my face, things like that, like having green spaces, being in green spaces were restorative to me. So the more I began to do some of these restoration type activities, the more I wanted it, the more I craved it, the more I was like, okay, well, what else can I do? What are some other uh, self-care sort of prioritization things that I can do? But then also, I began to just set boundaries around my time, talent, and treasure as well, right? It's like, okay, I'm the type of person that I like to know a lot of stuff. I like to be involved in things. And I just had to make the decision that that's not that's not that's not beneficial to me. That's not me showing up as my best. And that I needed to prioritize. Okay, well, what are the things that are most important to me? Where do I want to spend my time? So just being very intentional about that as well. Those were some of the major changes that I made.
I love that. And healing never comes without intention. Nothing changes really without us being intentional. And again, when you were speaking, you talked about so many things that I would love to to unpack and talk and address again. When you talked about ecotherapy, which is something we don't even think about. Ecotherapy basically is being in nature, the thing that covers us, habitat, our the earth, the green space, getting the vitamin D, letting the wind blow, touching the rain and all those things, and how it just what I think it does, it centers us. Is there someone greater than we are? You know what I'm saying? It kind of gives you a rest and a peace. Because when we look at ourselves, we know that, listen, I can't handle all of this. And I think being in nature kind of helps us understand that there is someone else here to help us on this journey called life. When you talked about setting boundaries, ugh, now, when you did that, how was it with the people you were setting the boundaries with? Was it yay, we understand, or were there attitudes? Did you lose relationships? What did that look like for you?
So yes, to all of the above. Uh, so when you begin to prioritize yourself and establish boundaries, for some people, that's going to feel like uh, you're being selfish, right? That's going to feel like some sort of infringement upon them. The fact that you have decided to um, prioritize yourself. And especially women, especially in Black women in particular, uh, because this whole nurturer uh, construct, right, that we have, it's generational, we've grown up with it. It is very difficult for us to even process what it means to put ourselves first
Mhm.
and not feel guilty about it, not feel like the bad person or that you're being selfish. Like it's very difficult for us. It's amazing like how many like women and groups and things that I speak to about this very topic around creating boundaries, and it is the hardest thing for us to do. But it's also one of the most important things for us to do as well, right? Because we're constantly giving and doing and nurturing and providing, like we're doing all the things all the time. And really, when you start to peel back the layers on that, though, some of that is based in trauma, and a lot of it is based in how we grew up as well, right? So, but we don't really want to, we don't really want to unpack that, right? And like get to the root of it. But it's like, why do I feel like I am not showing up in the world, or I am not being a good person if I don't give my all away? Why do we feel that way? I got to give everything away, everything, including my health and my sanity and all of that, right? Just to be a good woman, quote unquote. Mm-mm, no, I reject that completely, wholeheartedly reject it.
I love
So,
what you're saying there. I just want to just chime in. That is cultural. Like you can't be a good woman, even in relationships with the opposite sex. Um, you're considered a good woman if you just let him do whatever in the world that he wants to do and you stay there. You're considered a good woman if you are there for everybody in your family and you're the one that you call and you see the big mamas of the community. You know, and you look at Big Mama and like literally life has gone out of her because she has given everything. Like there's like the last end of her life, all she can do is lay in the bed because she has given everything to everyone else. And we drop by for 5 minutes, hey, how you doing? And we run on with our lives. And there she is laying there because she's poured out everything to you, you know. And we are taught that as women in our community to be that way, good woman, as you mentioned. And it's something that we must have conversations around, because I think, and this is just my opinion, that that's how we create young men who grow up to be men who don't know necessarily how to show up and be everything that he needs to be. And that's how we raise young women who don't show up, these privileged type of people who think that life is about them, and you know, everything's about me, and they don't consider and know what it means to be there for other people, because they were never taught what it meant to give and to take, to be receiver but also to be a giver. And so how are you, and there are other things that I want to talk about, but how are you, through your counseling and coaching these women, shift the narrative? What are you telling them? What are you sharing with them, to change this dynamic in our culture for the next generation?
so a couple of things. One, we have to recognize that it's happening, right? Like we have to recognize that, okay, there is a pattern here, right? There is a behavioral pattern that, whether we're conscious of it or not, that we're following. And then let's also look back, right? Let's look at our history. Let's look at our mothers and our grandmothers and our great grandmothers, and what has that generation to generation to generation, right? What has that looked like? And then we have to make a decision on, okay, this generational curse, if you will, who's going to be the one to break that, right? Is it going to be you? Are you going to be the one to try to set the stage differently for, for your daughter or potential daughters, or, granddaughters down the line, right? So, someone has to make the decision to be the curse breaker. Now that's where it starts, right? But there's a whole lot of work that has to be done after that. But somebody has to make that decision to say, it's going to be me. It's going to be me.
I like that. Now we're talking about balance. So tell me, how do you find the balance in saying me, and then not going too far to the left and too far to the right, but being, having the right amount of nurturing for yourself so that it doesn't become me, selfishness. Um, but there's a balance. Like it's necessary, but it's not the all in everything. You know what I'm saying? Because sometimes we can go from here to over there and we never find it here. And I think that's the key for successful living, is to find the balance in life and all things. So what would you say to someone who's saying, I get you. Yes, I'm on this journey. I'm getting ready to start. I'm starting today. It's going to be about me. And they end up, everything's about them, you know. My children is supposed to be about me. My husband is supposed to be about me. My job is supposed to be about me. And there is no balance.
Yeah, so I think we would have to probably back up a little bit and further define like self-care and self-love, right? Because it's not about selfishness, it's not about spa days, it's not about things and having stuff. That's not what it's about at all. It's really about self-love and nurturing yourself. So there's not a formula, a magic formula that's going to fit for everybody. But what I would say is identify and figure out what are the things that bring you joy. What are the things that feel restorative for you? And then do more of that. Do more. I don't buy into, well, you can only do this much or you can only do that much. I don't buy into that. Of course, you have to take care of your responsibilities, right? That goes without saying. But part of, like for instance, part of what brings me joy is being a mom and being the best mom that I can be. So for me, what does that look like? That means that I need to make sure that while my daughter is away at school, for example, right, that I'm doing some things so that I can restore myself before I see her again, right? Before she comes home from school. If I am depleted, then it's going to affect how I parent her. If my cup is empty, right? If I have if I'm tired and I'm worried and I'm stressed and I'm filled with all this lack, because you could be filled with lack too, right? So if I'm filled with all this lack and stress and anxiety and all of that, that's going to affect how I parent. And I'm going to be pouring into her that same thing. So even if our cups are empty of restoration, they could still be filled of not so great stuff. And we could still be pouring out. We're still pouring out, whether it's good stuff or not. So it's not about like not putting my kids first and not putting family or not doing, it's not about any of that. It's really about identify what makes you happy, what brings you joy, what feels restorative to you, and then do more of that. Also, I think that when we feel, you can feel when whether you call it stress or anxiety or whatever it is, right? But we can oftentimes feel discomfort in our bodies, right? Like maybe your eyes hurt, or maybe your chest hurts some, or maybe you feel it in your stomach. You have upset stomach a lot, or stomach pains. We feel physically in our body when something's not lining up right, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, physically, right? There are manifestations of that in our body, and it's important to listen to that and pay attention to that. What's your body telling you? Maybe your body is saying you need some rest. You need more rest. Or maybe your body is saying you need to laugh, right? So let's figure out how we can make find more laughter in our lives. Yeah, I just think it's very different for people, but you can have a successful life, career, existence, etc. by and also prioritize your joy.
Hmm. I
And
love that.
yeah, you could absolutely do both.
So, when you talked about it, I could see some women. You talked about how important it is for you to restore yourself, so that when you see your daughter again, that you can give what you have something to give. In essence, I know lots of women after working all day, and they can't even find the time to do it. Somewhere, if you don't have enough time for yourself, you're doing too much. So, how do you help women to find how to begin to prioritize their lives? So, you must have some me time, even if that means I get up 30 minutes earlier throughout the day to pour into myself, to do something I like, to meditate, to read, to get in. If you're a Christian, study, get in the Word, or whatever that looks like, whatever that is, to pour into yourself. How do you help women find the time? Like, first of all, I guess, how do you help them see that the importance, like it is necessary for you to find that time for yourself. And then how do they, when they're already busy, overworked, um, find that time?
So generally people find me once they recognize and establish, kind of settle with themselves that they do need to make a shift, right? So I don't have to do too much convincing, because usually if you found me, then you're already at the point where you're like, okay, I may not know what to do or how to do it, but I know that I'm ready for some change. And you know, what I encourage people to do is think about, how are you spending your day? We all say there's never enough time in the day, right? I don't have time. I don't have time. Everybody says that. We all have the same amount of time every day. We all have 24 hours in a day. And it's interesting when we actually are tuned in and pay attention and aware of how we spend our day, we actually have more time. We waste more time than we realize we do, right? We waste more time on social media and all of our apps and watching TV. And there are a lot of things that we do that's really just to dull our senses, right? It's really just to as an escape from reality of what's happening, right? Because either we had a bad day or we're not happy. Like there's reasons why we have all these distractions. So I challenge people to really think about, how are you spending your day, right? Like, note it, chart it out, okay? How much time are you spending? How much time do you sleep, right? How many hours of sleep do you get? How much time do you spend? You can look at your phone right now. And if you have an iPhone, it'll tell you, right? Like, how much time are you spending on apps and social media and different things? You can see. So take 30 minutes away from something that we may be doing that isn't helpful and restorative and filling us, and replace it with something that is, right? So maybe instead of listening to, Steve Harvey in the morning show, or, no shade to the Steve Harvey show, or something else, some music or something else in the morning on your way to work, maybe you listen to a podcast that's all about healing and restoration, or maybe you listen to a book, right? That's filling and restorative to you. So that's how you can replace that time that, again, we all have the same amount of time. Or a lot of times during the day at work, we have back-to-back meetings, right? It's like back-to-back meetings. So you didn't really have time to do work at work because you were too busy in meetings. So now you got to take work home and do work home, that whole thing. Okay, all right. Well, maybe instead of hour-long meetings, maybe you shift that to 45-minute meetings or 30-minute meetings. Give yourself a buffer between each meetings to breathe, take a walk around the building, take a walk outside, stretch, stand up. All of these things are restorative. So I really do challenge people to just think differently about what they're currently doing, recognizing that, yeah, you have time. We make time for what's important to us and what we want to make time for, right? Like, I don't really love going to the gym 3 days a week. I don't. But I've prioritized it because for me it's important. And I don't schedule meetings around it. Like, that's my time of focusing on me. That's my restorative time. If I don't make time for that, my day doesn't go right. I don't feel right. So it's important to me, and I prioritize it. I schedule meetings around it, all of that. So, we just have to be unashamed and unafraid to recognize, A, what do we need? What do we need? And then two, ask for it or go get it. Right? If you need some time to yourself between meetings, if you need like 5 minutes, 10 minutes between meetings, just to like woosah, before you go to the next thing, then take it, do it. I think sometimes we
Yeah.
just we don't feel like we have the permission to honor what we need or even know what we need. Most times we don't even know what we need.
I love what you're saying. How we have to think differently about our time. I think that's very important. So we are body, soul, and spirit. And so throughout the day, there should be something that we're doing towards that. I love how you talked about working out, and that's important. That's on your schedule. It's a non-negotiable, and you make your life around that. And, getting up in the morning, getting your mind together by meditating for even if it's 5 minutes, just start somewhere. Just start is the point. I always say the better you, the better the family, the better your job, the better your business. Um, the better your life. And so what you're doing on today is giving us key points, and I hope this is helping someone to just start somewhere. And as she's talked about, the first thing she said, I did it step by step. Like it wasn't something that I just woke up and boom, I began to do all of this. I had a huge elephant in front of me. I wasn't living, I wasn't showing up. And if I didn't shift, my life would be, very detrimental. And so she began to tackle that elephant one bite at a time. And what we're saying to you today, and first things first, think about like, what do I want my life to look like? Who do, how do I want to look? How do I want to show up in this world? And then begin to figure out like, what are the things that will make it necessary? Say, for instance, if you're overweight, that means that I need to begin to work out. Well, I don't have the time to work out. Well, let's look and see about, the 30 minutes to 2 hours you spend on Facebook. That's our way to escape. Sometimes we can use those 30 minutes to, work out. And man, will you feel better for it? You'll feel better for it. You'll look better for it. Your mind, your endorphins, you'll show up better in life because you're taking care of your body. These are some extremely important things that you're giving us on today, and we appreciate you. There were some other things that you talked about. Um, I remember my daughter when you spoke about the fact that when you begin to set boundaries and people will have issues, and sometimes we feel like because we're the superwoman, and life can't go on without us, and people need us so much, you
It will.
know.
It definitely goes on without us.
It
Yeah.
does. Absolutely. My daughter would say to me, she would say, Mama, they'll figure it out. And when I remember when she said that, it kind of click, 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 click. They sure will. They will figure it out. And so you stop trying to, because you feel like, oh my gosh, if I don't answer this phone call, if I don't talk them down off the ladder, they're going to make this huge mistake. Well, first of all, it is their life to live. Secondly, it is their choice. And thirdly, you got to learn how to live your life. A lot of times we use these things as ways to avoid our own lives, to avoid the stuff that's going on in the inside of us. Like, that's my escape. I don't want to deal with me. I can help you. I'm not trying to help me. So let us talk to us a little bit about that avoidance. Like, I don't want to deal with that. I don't want to deal with mama did. I don't want to deal with daddy said. I don't want to deal with, this stuff. Just let that sit here. I'm just going to help people. I'm going to help the world. I'm not going to worry about me. I'll be okay. Can you talk to us about that?
Mm. Well, you can do that, right? You can choose to not deal with or face some things that bubble up, whether from childhood or current experiences. Yes, you could absolutely choose to not do that. It will raise its head, though. It
Mm.
will raise its head. Now, I will also say that there are some traumas that, like, we're not always ready to deal with trauma, and that's fine, right? Because sometimes you do have to be ready to tackle and deal with certain things. And a lot of your, therapists and clinical psychologists will agree with that, right? You don't want to take someone somewhere that they're not necessarily ready to go. And there could be consequences to that, right? There could be, that's a delicate situation, and that does I think that's where the benefit of like a licensed therapist or counselor comes into play, because they can walk alongside you on that journey, right? To provide the resources and the support that you need to be able to uncover and unpack things as they come up. But I will also say that when we don't address certain things, certain traumas, childhood traumas, etc., they do resurface. And, counter dependence or ultra dependence, if you will, like the whole superwoman syndrome, a lot of that is based on childhood trauma, in addition to just some generational impacts and things that have been passed down as well, right? So when we don't deal with our stuff, other people might be dealing with it, right? So when we don't deal with our stuff, our children could be dealing with it. Um, as a result of interacting with us, right? It can have an impact on our children or our loved ones or people around us, and we may not even recognize it because we're so used to the stuff, right? The baggage, we're used to carrying the baggage. So we don't really recognize maybe the damage that it's causing to the people around us, but it does, right? Like there's the words that we say, right? They live and sometimes they can be heavy. And sometimes maybe when we react or respond or again operate out of trauma that has happened before, we don't even realize what we're doing or what we're saying or how our words are landing or like the bodies that we've left behind us, right? The trail of bodies behind us because we're just like powering through life. And I just think it's very important for us to be able to take the time and the effort and the energy to do a pulse check. Do a pulse check with ourselves and maybe even the people closest to us,
Mhm.
to ask them, how do I show up? Um, people, you would hope that you've given someone around you, someone in your circle, the permission to give you honest feedback, right? You hope that you have given someone that permission to give you honest feedback. If everybody's saying yes, 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 and agreeing with everything you say and do all the time, you're not getting honesty. You're not getting the truth.
I love what you said when, although we don't want to deal with it and we don't have to, we can choose someone is dealing with it. And that could be our children, that could be our husband, our spouse, our wives. COVID showed us something. COVID did two things. It said, go sit down and handle home. And what we found is some people found, home is important. They made it an intentional effort to begin to spend more time with their family. But then some people found that it caused more domestic violence issues. It caused more divorces because I wasn't ready to deal with myself. And these are the casualties that can't come behind us not dealing with ourselves. So I thought that was so powerful when you talked about if I'm not going to deal with me, somebody is dealing with me. And normally it's the very people that we love. It's the people that we live with every day, that we don't have to fake the funk with. We can just be. And that just being is, I can say what I want to say to you. I can do what I want to do to you, and sometimes without repercussions because it's the things that go on behind the four walls that nobody else knows about. And then I can go, to work in my three-piece suit and nobody ever knew that I just knocked my wife out. Or I can go to work, in my Louboutins and know that I just demolished my child with their mouth. So it's important. One of the things you talked about, I've heard you say consistently, is therapy, finding someone to talk to. So for some people, therapy may be talking to your pastor. It may be talking to someone that's a professional therapist, a psychologist, psychiatrist, whatever, but finding someone that you can feel comfortable enough to share with what this bubbling up is that's going on inside of me that I keep trying to avoid. You want to just talk a little bit more on that, piggyback just maybe a little bit more?
Therapy? Yeah, so I am a proponent of therapy, and COVID has created so many opportunities for access where maybe there hadn't been before. So there's, telehealth and I can't speak. Telehealth and telemedicine. Why that was so hard for me to say. um, have have allowed more and more people, right, an opportunity to meet with a therapist and virtually. So there's directories out there. There's a directory on Psychology Today. Therapy for Black Girls has a directory also where you can identify someone in your area. You can also search by different demographics. So if you wanted to find a female or a Black female therapist, for example, you can search for all of those things with those websites. But then there are also like apps. Just Therapy for Black Girls, the podcast itself is a fantastic resource. Just the rich conversations that are being had on that platform and the various topics that can benefit anyone, not just Black women, not just women. They have a lot of good topics on there. But they're also communities now. Like we're talking about mental health more than we ever have. There's, the stigma is still there, but it's reducing. The stigma is reducing when it comes to mental health and prioritizing that, which is great and fantastic. And sometimes people get caught up on, well, I don't know how to find a therapist, or I don't, what should I be looking for, or what questions should I ask, or sometimes we kind of wrap ourselves around the how to do therapy, and that prevents us from actually starting on the journey. So I would encourage people to just start. You can start by asking around in your network if someone is aware, would recommend a therapist. You could do that. You could also search one of the directories that I mentioned to you. There's also other apps like BetterHelp and Talkspace. Those are other resources where you could find a mental health professional as well. And what I would also say is, just because the first therapist that you find may not be the best one for you also. So don't get discouraged if maybe you meet with one and you've had, I would suggest more than one session, right? So maybe if you had like 2 or 3 sessions, and you're thinking, I don't know, right, if this person is for me, that's okay. That's okay, right? Just don't give up on the journey or the desire to seek therapy and counseling, and to really begin to start to unpack some things for yourself. Like, don't give up on the journey, even if you feel like maybe I haven't found the right one just yet.
I love that. You hit something and you said, we have all these titles that we, I guess in essence, make up who we are. And we need to peel back the titles and just become human, just become a woman and just become a man. And then begin to deal with the bareness, I guess, so to say, of who we are. So when you talked about drink first, then pour, what are some of the directions you would give to just a bare woman, a bare man, to begin to drink first, then pour? And also in pouring, how do you get out of you all of the issues that, that the stuff that you don't want to deal with? I guess we kind of covered that on therapy, but talk to us about drinking first, then pouring, how to begin that journey.
So we're always pouring out, whether we realize it or not. We're always pouring out. We're always teaching people how to treat us, by the way that we show up, by our actions. So we're always pouring out. Now, the question is really, what are you pouring out? You can only pour out. You can only pour what you have. So that's why it's so important to make sure that, what are we filling our minds with, right? What are we eating spiritually and physically and mentally? Because that's what we're giving to other people. So that drink first bit is essentially everything that we've talked about today, right? It's the identifying what are the things that restore you, that bring you joy. I think that is so important, because a lot of people don't even know what that is. So just doing the exercise, right? Taking the time to think about that, to reflect on it, to figure that out, is a very necessary step. Because once we find that out, once we figure that out, then we can begin to try to do more of those things, right? Like if you say, what brings me joy? Well, let's see, quality time with loved ones. Laugh. I love to laugh, right? I love to laugh. Traveling, spending time with my daughter, or cooking. You know, some people making candles, making soaps. There's so many things that bring people joy, and it's like, okay, well, how do let me figure out how I can fit this into my life. How can I fit this into even if it's, you start out at just 5 minutes, right? Even it's like, okay, I'm going to take 5 minutes each day and call a loved one or a family member that I haven't talked to in a long time, um, in just 5 minutes each day. Okay, right? So sometimes we make these things feel too hard because it's like I'm trying to do all the things at one time, and it's like, no. The best way to, if you ever read James Clear's Atomic Habits, right? He talks about small incremental changes that really create a lifestyle change over time. But it's those small, like, daily things that we do. That's just like, for the lose weight example, right? Let's just say I want to lose weight. Okay, well, I can't just lose 5 pounds in a day, well, I guess you could, but it wouldn't necessarily be healthy, nor would it be, long-standing, right? So it's like, okay, if I wanna lose 15 pounds, then each day I need to reduce calories. Each day, maybe I need to walk a little bit more, right? Get 30 minutes of activity. Or it's like, okay, well, if you don't do those things, then the opposite will happen, right? We'll gain a few pounds without even realizing it, and after a couple of months or years, it's like, well, I don't know what happened. It's like, well, each day, our behaviors and our actions create a habit. It's either a habit that you want or a habit you don't want.
Mm. I love that. That is so. That weight thing is so true. COVID weight is evident to, I think, everybody.
Yeah.
So you look up and you try and figure out who is that person in the mirror. I love what you talked about just starting with, like, figuring out what it is that I enjoy. I think a lot of us are so frustrated because, like, we don't even know what it is that we want. I remember, one point in my life where I was just, ugh, and somebody said, "So what is it that you want?" And I had no clue. I just knew that what I had wasn't working. It wasn't fitting the bill. And so if that's you today and you're figuring out, like, I'm just so frustrated, I feel stuck, I don't know what is next. This life of mine is just nowhere near what I thought it was going to be. What she has said is just take some time and figure out, what if I had no barriers, no boundaries, what would I do with this life of mine? What brings me joy? And if you could just start with that first step, you will begin to see that will be the beginning of changes, a life change. That, as she's talked about, being restored, so that when you're restored, your family is restored. When you're restored, your life, your job, your business, you're going to find that everything is just so much better because it starts with you. You are the first thing first. If you didn't get it by now, you are the first thing first. I'm going to let our guest tell us the last thing she wants to share with us. We are so glad that she took the time out of her busy schedule to talk to us. It's something else that you do on a regular basis. I guess it is your profession. You are a diversity, equity, inclusion person, and so that is extremely huge. I think COVID kind of ramped that up for us as well, with George Floyd and things of that nature. We start seeing universities and corporations, and everybody has to have a division of diversity, equity, and inclusion. So we want you, before you leave, tell us a little bit about, like, what that looks like, especially for the brown and the black people, and really in general for the community. Because what I believe, what makes us a great nation is that, and what makes us a great community, and what makes us a great family, is that no one is left behind. that everyone is reaching their full capacity, their full potential, and we're doing everything that we can to help them and not hinder. And so I think that's more so what diversity, equity, and inclusion has kind of, or it's supposed to be its purpose, is to make sure that everyone is included. Can you talk to us just a little bit about, I know it has nothing to do with drink first, being poor, but I couldn't let it pass.
Yeah, well, there are synergies. So I really like to talk about the intersectionality of diversity, equity, and inclusion and wellness, mental wellness specifically, because there's a conversation that not a lot of people are having about the impact that the lack of diversity, equity, and inclusion can have on an individual or collective mental wellness and mental health, and vice versa, right? When we talk about the wellness space or the mental health space, I don't think enough credence or attention is given to the different demographics of people and how we experience wellness differently. So they do very much, in my mind, intersect and connect. But in terms of your question, there's so much there's so much trauma, collective trauma, that we have experienced over the past 20 months or so that I don't think has left anyone unscathed, right? Like your life or family, or you have been touched or affected in some type of way as a result of what has happened over the past 20 months. So whether it is you lost a family member due to COVID, or a loved one due to COVID, or perhaps there was a loss of job, loss of income, loss of employment, loss of health, loss of freedom. There was all this grief and trauma that happened collectively to all of us. And one, I think it humanized us all for a period, right? I think that period has kind of waned a bit, right? We're starting to get our sea legs about us again. We're starting to get back into like old routines. And I think some of the humanity bit that we learned during COVID is eroding somewhat. But I do think that it has also created a lot of opportunity. It has created a lot of opportunity for innovation and creativity. It has allowed so many of us to focus and prioritize our health and our well-being. And as you said before, it's created opportunities for us to create like sanctuaries in our home and to recognize, okay, the way that I'm showing up isn't working. So I got to figure it out. I got to figure out, okay, how am I going to get some more of this joy? That's why you see more people spending time outside and going camping and doing all the things that we've learned how to do, all the new experiences that we've had, in addition to a lot of the trauma that we've experienced as well over the past year. So, the diversity, equity, and inclusion journey is one that I think will continue. I think as long as we have people who have, are from different backgrounds and cultures and ethnicities, etc., I think there's always going to be a conversation and a argument for and against diversity, equity, and inclusion. Um, it's important work and it's needed. To your point, everybody has decided to establish some sort of diversity office, and focus on the work, and it's overdue, quite frankly, right? Like this is something that we should be talking about, and hopefully we'll get to a point one day in the future where it's not a separate thing. It's not diversity, equity, and inclusion isn't thought about as a sidebar, but is embedded into an organization's culture and fabric and how they do business, right? We're just more aware and inclusive. Like that's really at the end of the day, it's like let's all be more aware and inclusive. And um how do we do that? How do we execute upon that? So it's it's tiring work. It's good work, but it is tiring work, because sometimes you do feel like you're kind of beating your head up against the wall. Um, but that doesn't mean that it shouldn't be done.
Absolutely. And I think to your point, and to encourage you. It may not be this generation, but I can assure you that the next generation, they are all in. I had an opportunity to speak at one of the an event for a university, and the young people are on board. I mean, they are really, really honing in and understanding the importance of that, which gives me hope. And I hope it will give you hope as well. And I know that it is a tiring job. It can be stressful. And we just pray for grace for you to do it and to do it well, and to make your mark for the Black and the brown people, and help all of us to know that we're just simply humans. You know, we're here together. We have to be here together. The skin color and what I like in my culture doesn't change the mere fact that as humans, we just want respect and love from each other. And that's what we all deserve from each other as mere humans. That's who we are. So thank you again. Do you want to say anything before we end? Or again, we're so glad you're here. You really shared a lot with us on today, and I know that it's going to help not just someone, but a lot of people assess their lives. We speak more grace to you as you walk this journey as a single mother raising your daughter. We hope that you have an amazing tribe to walk alongside of you, especially as you're doing this important work, not just for your profession with diversity, equity, and inclusion, but also in the business of helping women to drink first, then pour. You have a lot on your plate, and we just pray for grace for you to continue to make sure you're restoring yourself, so that you can pour into your baby and pour into all of these other facets of your life. You have anything else you want to share before we end?
No, thank you for that. Yeah, I received that. This was fun. This was fun talking to you today. And folks can find me at Drink First Then Pour, POUR, pretty much everywhere.
Absolutely. And if you're looking for a mentor, I saw where she works with women who are really, really doing it. Like if you're a woman on the path, you're doing it, but you figured out all this doing has left me bankrupt, then she's the woman to give a call to. And so she can help you begin to back into yourself, restore yourself. So go to Drink First Then Pour .com, and you can find her information there and contact her, begin your journey. If you need some help, she is definitely a person that you would want to have on your team to help you become the person that you need to be in this season. Again, thank you so much for joining us. We look forward to talking to you again. Thank you all for tuning in to the Jocelyn Drake Show. We hope you have an amazing weekend, and we will see you next time on the Jocelyn Drake Show. Have an amazing day. Bye-bye.